trials that we now do in doTERRA and have done for a long period of time. There is nobody else who does those things. And in fact, if we were to overlay other companies onto the same, let me give a qualifier here. It's going to sound like for a moment that I'm being derogatory to other companies. It's only because I am. Not in an unkind way completely, just functional. If we look at this timeline, here's why it has relevance to our own understanding. That includes you and me, all of us together. That very first point, microanalysis, do you realize that this is the sum total of all of the science and all of the progression that every other company has ever made in regards to essential oils? We are the only company who has progressed far beyond that. And all of our moniker of what and who we are as a company resides not just with that first point, but with every point on that entire timeline. Here's why those things hold some significance for us. One of the primary reasons why, and this is again from a competitor, and I'm not going to say who because it doesn't really matter. I'm really not trying to be derogatory. But this is a deep concern. The chemistry of an oil has nothing to do, or the value of an oil has nothing, the chemistry of an oil has nothing to do with quality. Instead, quality is solely determined through aroma profiles and cost. The more expensive an oil, better quality. So I have great news for you. Today we're raising all of our prices by 4 times. Just so you know, I just more than triple our impacts. So this does not make any sense. Now yesterday I talked with you just briefly about the pillars of quality that we have in doTERRA. I know yesterday, those of you who were privileged to attend some of our breakout sessions and the Terra Talks, you heard Dr. Osgood also talk a little bit briefly about some of our pillars of quality. These aren't just things that we decided would look good on paper or that we thought to ourselves would have some type of a meaning for us, but instead these are the things that stand as clear guideposts for us in every single thing that we do. Now we can divide these into 2 categories which make perfect sense. One is going to be about chemistry and the other is going to be about the healthy outcomes that we all seek and that we enjoy in what we do within doTERRA. The reason why these become so critical for us, and I know that you had brief exposure to this yesterday as well, is that adultery is rampant in the essential oil community at large. It's too easy to take what nature gave us and to make it something different. It's too easy to take even the most delicate of that chemistry and make it devoid from the process and say that it has no value and that it has no place. And so we had no choice when we look at things, for example, birch, which there are no samples of birch. There is no birch that any longer is not synthetic in one way or another. It's not easy for doTERRA to undertake now bringing birch back to life so that we'll have it in the future. It wasn't easy to learn how to cultivate Roman chamomile. As you recall, we didn't have Roman chamomile for a long period of time because there was no quality that we could source or find anyway. It's not easy to do what doTERRA does, but it is 100% necessary. Those that we care for are the recipients of that good and great work that is done. So I'm going to take just a moment now, and I'm going to commit my partners to the same thing I'm now committing myself to. which is not new to you because you've heard each one of them say this in their own way. We are 100% committed to who we are as a company. doTERRA is not something that we do. It's something that we live and breathe. It's become a part of who we are. It's in our chemistry, it's in our DNA. And I suspect it's the exact same way for you. You have our full, unwavering commitment that that is who we have always been and who we will forevermore be in everything that we undertake within doTERRA. Sometimes, every once in a while, I hear some criticism about the term CPTG. That doesn't really mean anything, that has no merit, that has no value. The real value of CPTG is twofold. First, we wanted to hold ourselves to a higher standard. A standard that actually didn't exist anywhere. Just like we had to do something different with the essential oils, we had to do something different with how we would gauge our progress and our success in holding ourselves accountable to that standard. The other reason why CPTG is so important, because when we talk about purity, we're also leading to the very end run of those 4 pillars that we talked about. We're also then going to talk about efficacy. And the value that efficacy brings to each and every single one of us, and why it's so critical. And that one word that maybe you won't completely and fully understand is something called chirality. Chirality is the position in space that an essential oil has. It's what allows an essential oil to communicate effectively through the known biochemical pathways and receptors that exist within our bodies. Chirality is not just the formula of a particular component or compound. There's a written formula, but there's also a spatial formula. And its orientation becomes really important. I heard somebody say on the first day of convention that purity is of the utmost importance. They are and were and still are 100% correct. And that is because we cannot recreate chirality when we do something synthetically. We care about CPTG because when we isolate chemistry or we remove chemistry, even in the smallest amount, it affects the overall construct of what the essential oil is biochemically, organically, and how it will react and respond. So CPTG is of the utmost importance in that conversation. And it leads us into another quick point. And I want to lay this as a foundation for you so that you have confidence as we continue to move forward. When the consistency of an essential oil, when it's not present, then there's inconsistency in the value that we receive. They have to go hand in hand. This is a really interesting study. This was in a scientific presentation, actually, that Dr. Osgood Thorpe gave not too long ago. And in that representation to them, he shared this study. And this is a study on the effect of aromatherapy. This was a randomized human clinical trial. And look at the outcome. All those exposed to bergamot, essential oil, they showed a greater reduction in feelings of anxiousness than those in the control group, those who didn't receive. Is that a positive outcome? It's a wonderful outcome, right? Or do we get excited about that? Of course we do. But here's another study that's, interestingly enough, the exact same thing. Inhalation of aromatherapy, a controlled double-blind randomized trial. And aromatherapy is administered with bergamot. In this study is not beneficial. Why is that? Why is that? And I know that you find yourself in the exact same position that I and my partners do, that people become unduly critical of where we are with our essential oils because of things like this. This is an issue of consistency. This is an issue of when somebody says the quality of an essential oil has nothing to do with chemistry. Quality of an essential oil has everything to do with chemistry. One of the things that we are extremely proud of in doTERRA is that we have consistency with our essential oils. And let me put this in perspective for you. So we know that we're interested with the entire component and structure of the essential oil, all of its chemistry together. We have a small variation that exists from one lot to another to another. And there's lots of reasons why that can happen, including just the chemical composition that evolves in the different parts of the world. And you've seen now in all the exposure that we've given to you that we source oils literally from all over the world. We are going to have some variation. But remember, we are consumed with consistency, not just purity. Meaning that if we find something, and we've done all of this good work that we have, did you like Dr. Stevens' information yesterday? Talking about the benefits that are coming from Medi-Cal. If that's the case, then we don't want those occasionally, we want those all of the time. And so when we look at important chemistry, like in this case with linalool and linalool acetate, we have very little variation from one batch to another. This is representative of, we went all the way back to when we first started doTERRA to where we are right now. And our variation in those two very important compounds is 1.07 and 1.81. Great, right? Yeah. Now let me ask the real question. How many of you know what that means? Some of you do, but let me put it in perspective for you. We have organized these standards that we draw upon and that we hold ourselves accountable to because the only known standards outside of that allow for as much as a 50% variability, not 1.07. And so there is no consistency. And so when we see a study that says bergamot was great for this, and bergamot didn't work for this, and it's the exact same study, can I ask you please, don't let it bother you. Who cares? I've been waiting for 3 days to say this. They don't know what we know because they don't do what we do. Why we have co-impact sourcing. I know we think of co-impact sourcing in this wonderful world and we all have the same feelings and emotions and ties that root and ground us in doTERRA because of our influence with people around the world. But co-impact sourcing is also about chemistry. It's also about, remember Dr. Stevens' look yesterday? This is my excited look. We get excited about chemistry because we know we can impact chemistry. So we live in a time and we live in a place right now where maybe you feel challenged. Please don't. Let your confidence reside with us for a while if that's what's needed. Know that we are surrounded by brilliant people. You are erroneous if you think I stand on stage alone. You are erroneous if you think Emily stands on stage alone. You are erroneous if you think Corey's or any of the others that you have seen stand on stage alone. So let's move forward, can we? Let's not get mired down in the equation of somebody saying, and I had this experience not too long ago, somebody shared with me a post of a new company that just started. And in that post they said, we took our oils to a doctor who is an owner of doTERRA. I only know one doctor that's an owner of doTERRA. And he analyzed our oils And he was so amazed and said, these oils are just like ours and even better. I cry foul. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know that person, and they don't know me. And I wouldn't analyze the oil anyway. I would take it to our team of experts who would say, are you out of your mind? What is this? This is not an oil. Let's no longer find ourselves in a discussion of trying to compete with individuals who say, we do that too. Here's my GC, where's yours? Just like doTERRA. Instead, let's be flattered. Let's invite them into the equation of doTERRA with great confidence and exuberance in knowing that they will experience for the first time what an essential oil really should be. I want to shift gears for just a minute because we do want to talk about MetaPower, and I want to drive some things together for you that will help it to make a little more sense and put it into a context of usability. And to start that conversation, I want to talk with you about something known as epigenetics. Now, this was a really interesting article that was, I had you at epigenetics, didn't I? If only I'd known that from the very beginning, that would have been perfect. This was a really interesting article that was actually published several years ago in Time magazine. What we're all consumed with right now is that we want to close this gap. We want to close the gap in our own health and in our own span for life. And one of the ways that we can do that is to be consumed with epigenetics. And so what is epigenetics? Genes, this is an important thing. Genes influence specific health challenges. And at the same time, our lifestyle influences whether or not those challenges will manifest themselves. Epigenetics do not change the context of your DNA. Instead, it changes how your body reads the DNA. It changes how your body is able to react and respond. This is why lifestyle is so important. And the whole of that, to make this really simple, you already have an epigenetic graph and roadmap. It is called the Wellness Pyramid. It is lifestyle. These are all the things and all of the elements of lifestyle, and this is your daily approach. Last night, as my wife and I were out enjoying and intermingling with many individuals through the parties that we went to, and then throughout my conversations that I've had with many of you through convention, this is the one element that we seem to be missing. It's not just about what we do with MetaPower. It has to be how they all congeal and all come together. Now, last year at convention, we changed one of the categories. We changed it to movement and metabolism. We're changing another one today that's going to be reduced exposure and support detoxification. You're going to see changes from time to time for two main reasons. One, sometimes it's a clue to things that might be coming in the future. Secondly, it's an opportunity for you to have an understanding that our products that we speak to you about with regularity fit neatly into this program. Not because of a marketing strategy, but because of the idea that what you do in your lifestyle also projects to what your health outcomes will be. And it's not something I liked yesterday when Nicole said, it's not magic, it's chemistry. Everything that happens in your body is chemistry. Your lifestyle influences chemistry. And it influences at the deepest level that we have within the whole of our body and that framework, which is within the DNA of our very cells itself. And so use this as a marker for you to be able to progress and move forward. You've heard about the value of lifelong vitality. Now I want to pause here for just a minute and share a couple of other things for you. It's not just about lifelong vitality. There's other things that will help you in this journey for metabolic health as well. For example, our protein shakes or our green shakes. Those are great meal replacements, and they'll help to reduce your caloric load as well as your glycemic load. Getting rid of some of those things that we normally would eat and doing it in a healthy way. Fiber also changes the way that your body manages glucose, and it absorbs more slowly. It's not just only lifelong vitality, but we have tied lifelong vitality to this concept of metabolism for one clear reason. This is micronutrients, and your body has to have appropriate micronutrient density. And taking everything else out for 3 reasons. Here's the 3 things you need to know about why lifelong vitality. First, the Microplex VMZ. It's about enzymatic activity. We spend a lot of time now talking about why also you need Terrazyme. We can link it to all of these other things. But know that without vitamins and minerals, you're going to be inhibited in the enzymatic activity that you need. And in every single function of what we have for metabolism, it is chemical reaction and response. And that is driven by metabolic enzyme activity. So you need Microplex VMZ. When we talk about the alpha CRS, I know we've always talked about energy, and it does factor into that because it supplies the additional nutrients that your cell needs to proper functionally through those cycles of energy production and other things that happen within the cell. And then lastly, it really is about structure. Lifelong vitality is about structure and function within the cells. And structure because we need membrane fluidity. The outside surface of your cell, that cell membrane, is comprised primarily of fatty acids. And those are critically important because if we don't have them present, then we have plasticity which begins to develop through the cell structure. That means that my cell not only is limited in its function, but it cannot communicate. Now I have a challenge for you. Statistically, we know how many of you are using lifelong vitality. And so I will not ask for a raise of hands. But can I please ask you, if you want to receive the maximum benefit from MetaPower, to please start using lifelong vitality regularly. Now we were talking about structure, and when we talk about structure, we also need to talk about chemical communication. This is how our cells communicate one with another. You've heard me say it many, many times. Everything that happens in your body is just chemistry. Everything. Not one thing escapes chemistry. And so having the right chemistry, going back to what we talked about earlier, by the way, those quality standards factor into every product we have in Norterra. But going back to the essential oils, it's no small and insignificant thing that in every single new product we release to you, there is essential oil. And specifically in the MetaPower, this is the kingpin of how all of that product works. It's in everything that we do in MetaPower as well. Now let me tell you why it plays such a critical and such an important role. And it's one primary reason. Essential oils support chemical communication. And they do that by either upregulating or downregulating pathways. We can spend a lot of time now talking about the surface of the cell and receptor sites and the glycoproteins that exist there and the messenger molecules, and none of that matters. Know that your cells have to communicate. They have to communicate because I need to know what you need me to do. So think back to Dr. Stevens' research yesterday. I was really excited when she shared that, partially because I know how hard they have worked on those things. Secondly, because of what it represented. You think about when she showed you the MetaPower blend and the action that it was creating within our adipose tissue, adipogenesis. How did that happen? There's nothing in there but essential oil. It's communication of pathway. Pathway. We have to elicit pathway so that we can have response. And essential oils do that in a way that's natural and that the body is able to receive and react and respond to. It's not that we put oils in MetaPower because we thought if we didn't, you would say, why don't we have oils in them? We put oils in MetaPower because oils is the entire crux of having the cascade even begin through pathway. Does that make some sense? It's the perfect union between the two. And so that leads us into this discussion now about MetaPower. It's meant to be used as an entire system, to look at the entire outcome of what our expectation is. It would be great just to use MetaPower Advantage all by itself, if that's what you want to do. But it would be better to use all of the MetaPower products, coupled with lifestyle and coupled with lifelong vitality. I want to talk a little bit more about lifestyle. If we summarize this, we would say that lifelong vitality supports the structure. These are your talking points. Lifelong vitality supports cell structure and function through micronutrients. And then on the other side of that, we have the MetaPower system, which does not contain macronutrients. Macronutrients are the foods that we eat: sugars, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And what the MetaPower does is it gives our body the ability to break down the micronutrients more efficiently so that they're readily available for metabolic process. Does that make sense? And then the essential oils, why we continue to use the essential oils is the essential oils support proper communication in upregulating and downregulating specific pathway within the body. The pathways that we're trying to upregulate and downregulate are associated with that whole big map. Remember that big giant map that Dr. Osgood Thorpe showed you? He was so excited about that. He came into my office as he was preparing and he goes, look at this. They're all going to be so excited. You created some excitement, all right. I'm not sure what kind it was, but you did create some excitement. The last part I want you to understand is lifestyle. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit more. So this is meant for you. It was, we took everything that you've now learned about MetaPower and we put it in some really easy and some really convenient step-by-step. Here's what I do every single day. Here's how I follow my products. Here's what my lifestyle markers can be. It can be as simple as exercise, or I'm going to change my diet. It can be any number of different things. It's all there for you. It's available right now. So scan the QR code, and it is your beginning point with the journey we're all about ready to go to. Are you excited about that? This will be familiar to you, but it will draw it all together and will help you to make more sense of how not only you're going to progress, but how you're going to go help others to progress. Now, we're going to talk about lifespan for just a minute. Lifespan and health span. And lifespan and health span, by the way, if we didn't get that, don't worry. We'll make sure that you have it available for you. Lifespan and health span, there's a new medical term which has been developed. And that medical term is called metaboloepigenetics. And what they're saying is that it is impossible to separate metabolism from lifestyle choices, because it is about genetic expression. Now, we've learned a lot about NAD, NAD+, the way there's NAD plus is NAD just has a hydrogen atom attached to it, a hydrogen molecule. It'll all go back to NAD, that's just part of the cycle. We know that NAD, among the many different outcomes that it produces within the cell, and by the way, MetaPower is going to, we know, increase that level. We've showed you the statistical relevance of that through the human studies that we did, and that we'll continue to do. We're not done doing those things. We know that NAD has value. I want to go past what you know more than you understand in just a moment. You have heard me say many, many times, we win and we lose our health one cell at a time. Can I give you some insight into the effects of MetaPower and the things that we've been talking about at that cellular level? Is that okay? I want to introduce a new protein to you. It's not new in discovery, but it's new to us. And they're called sirtuins. And sirtuins are messenger proteins. And sirtuins have lots of different functions associated with them. One of them is communication, specifically with your DNA. Now, when we look at sirtuins as a category, we see all the different benefits. The one that I really want to highlight is the one that talks about DNA integrity and how they support DNA integrity. This gets to be a little complex and it gets to be a little complicated. So I want you just to listen to me for a couple of moments. I know that when we talk about DNA and we start talking about histones and nucleosomes and how the DNA transcription takes place and all of those things, it gets to be a big pile of goo. I only put that up there so that you can have some relevance to what I'm about to tell you. I do not have a way to illustrate it to you other than just to share, here's what's really happening. I want you to think about what we've talked about. We've talked about lifestyle. We've talked about nutrition, and we've talked about essential oils. Here's how they all tie together. See if you can grasp this. We said that lifestyle was kind of the cornerstone of the foundation of things that we're doing. And when our lifestyle is challenged, either because of stress, or because of poor nutritional choices, or just in general poor life choices, or uncontrolled emotional responses, or whatever it happens to be, we know, as you learned already, that metabolic value within the body begins to diminish. Does that make sense? NAD production begins to diminish. Cellular metabolic energy begins to diminish. Sirtuins are dependent on the presence of NAD. So sirtuins also begin to diminish. And that has consequence at the cellular level. Yes, because of the nucleosomes. Yes, because of the histone molecules. Yes, because of acetyl and all of its interaction with those things. And here's the point. When sirtuins aren't present, what you're looking at here is an illustration of how our cell's DNA really needs to do two things. Our cells need to do two things. One is our DNA needs to replicate. And two, our cells need to communicate. And they communicate through chemistry. Your DNA needs to be protected. And the reason why it needs to be protected is because, among other things, we have internal stressors. We have metabolic oxidation that occurs as we go through this process, and it's damaging to your DNA. We also have external factors that are damaging to your DNA. And we have suppression of this system. Your DNA becomes exposed. And when it becomes exposed, not only is it under transcription, but it can transcribe metabolic errors or cellular errors within that transcription because it's susceptible to damage, like oxidation. Does that make some sense? So what we're talking about with this MetaPower system is that when we upregulate our lifestyle and we try to make better choices and we try to do the things that we're supposed to, that cascade looks very different. Instead, that cascade is we have adequate amounts of NAD and the other metabolic cofactors that we need so that our body functions appropriately metabolically. And that does include all we've talked like lifelong vitality and the other nutrients that I gave some suggestions to today. When we look at those together and NAD is present, sirtuins are present, and as a messenger protein, it has lots of effects, but within the DNA itself, it has one primary effect. It removes the acetyl group from off of a histone tail. And it then winds very tightly, and it is protected. And we do less cell damage. So when we talk about closing this gap between lifespan and health span, it happens at the cellular level. And you cannot go through that process unless you link all of these things together. It is about micronutrients. It is about our body being able to metabolize macronutrients more efficiently. It is about the essential oils and the communication that they bring. And it is about our lifestyle. When we look at metabolism, when we look at the opportunity that's ahead of us, it is magnificent. I've been on my own metabolic journey. I've lost 15 pounds. I've been riding my bike between 15 and 20 miles every day. Okay, don't get too excited. It does have an electric assist on it. I will confess. Because if I don't, my wife is going to somehow find you and say, it's an electric bike. But in my defense, I only use it when I feel like I have to. Otherwise, it's just me. But I figure it's better to keep movement than to quit. Are you like me, and do you feel like our future is bright in doTERRA? When I think about doTERRA, I had an experience in closing the other day. I was in my hotel room, and my wife had not yet come to Salt Lake, and I was working on a pathway, to be honest with you. And I have a habit of noodling on my windows. I had asked for some dry erase markers so that I could start drawing out pathways and looking at chemical relationships. And I was on a lower level in the hotel, so I easily could just look right down where the entryway was into the hotel where I'm at. And I saw many people coming and going, all carrying big, hefty doTERRA bags. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing. So then I thought, it'd be really cool to have a Michael Jackson moment, so I knocked on the window. And a few looked up, and I waved, and all of a sudden, cameras were turning. I thought, oh, if only I had a baby to hold out over the balcony. This would be CNN. This would be fantastic. This would be amazing. But then people didn't leave because they saw me drawing on the windows, so I had to move to a new set of windows. In doTERRA, I hope you know the importance that you play. I hope you know the relevance that you have. Everything that gets accomplished in doTERRA is that much better because of you. I want you to know that when things are hard, as they often are, and we do difficult things, we move forward because of you. Yes, doTERRA has. Thank you. Yes, doTERRA blesses our life too, and for that we are forever grateful. Now I'm reminded of a story of a wise old man who lived up on top of a mountain. And in the surrounding villages, people would often travel to visit with him and to discover the answers to their deepest questions. And there were two young men who lived in a village nearby, and they constructed within themselves that I think what we'll do is we'll go prove the wise man to be a fraud. And so they concocted this idea that we're going to capture a small bird, and we'll make the journey to visit with this individual, and we'll ask him one question. We'll say, old man, we have a bird in our hand. Is it alive or is it dead? And if he says it's alive, we'll crush it, and show him that it was dead. And if he says it's dead, we'll release it and show him that it was alive, and we'll prove that he was a prophet. And so excitedly they captured a bird and they began making their journey. And when they finally arrived, one of the young men posed the question to the elderly man. This wise gentleman who had solved so many things. And they said, "Old man, I have a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead?" And the old man thought for a few moments, very carefully. And then he said, "Well, my boy, that's in your hands." I commit to you that we will continue to do our good work. We'll do everything within our power to support you and to help you. We're not walking away from MetaPower. This is not a launch and leave program. This is a launch and go program. And this will be an opportunity for us to extend our reach and to help others. But my good friends, it's in your hands.